Hang on, sir. We're gonna go live now. We're live now.
All right, good morning. This is a meeting of the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority Board. I'm Vice Chair John Joya from Contra Costa, and I will be chairing today in place of our Chair, Supervisor David Pine. With that, we'll start with a roll call.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Chair Joya, Authority Boards. If I can have all of you guys please unmute for me. Awesome, thank you. I'll be calling the roll. Vice Chair Joya.
Here.
Supervisor Peskin.
Present.
Director Hammond.
Here.
Supervisor Gorin. Councilmember Hahn.
Present.
Councilmember Lieber.
Here.
Chair Pine. And we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. And just as a note to the public, so members of the public can make comments during this meeting by using the raise hand function in Zoom at the appropriate time on the item that they wish to comment on. And we will have public comment on each agenda item and at the beginning of the meeting shortly on our non-agenda items. And so we welcome you to provide comments. So we've done our roll call. So public comments, this is the chance for the public to speak on items that are not on our agenda. We can't actually act on those items. Please press the raise hand or *9 if you would like to speak. So let's see if there's any public comment. And then Taylor, you can tell us if there's any pre-submitted public comments not on the agenda.
We do not have any pre-submitted comments, not on the agenda, but we do have one hand raised. Andrew and Chris, can you please move them over?
Moving over now.
Thank you, Joshua. You are good to speak.
Thank you. I'm Josh Quigley from Save the Bay, and I just wanted to start off by offering our congratulations to Amy Hutzel on her new positions leading both the Coastal Conservancy and the Restoration Authority. Amy, we're obviously very proud of your roots as staff alumni at Save the Bay. And after seeing your great service to the state of California and the California coast over more than 2 decades, we're very excited to continue working with you in your new role. So I just wanted to offer that congratulations up front. And then a couple other items that I just wanted to mention quickly. The first is that the San Francisco Chronicle had a great front page article this week on the Dutch Slough marsh restoration project, showing some of the progress that's being made in the Delta region. But it also unfortunately highlights the way that crucial tidal marsh restoration projects aren't moving quickly enough in the face of rising sea levels. Planning for that project, I think, started more than 15 years ago, which I'm told by our executive director, David Lewis, is actually long enough that 3 generations of Save the Bay staff have worked on that project at various organizations and agencies. So while this authority is invested in accelerating permitting and agency coordination through the BRIT process, there's also a big need to press federal, state, and local agencies to accelerate planning for these projects so that more acreage is ready for tidal marsh restoration sooner. And we're hopeful that that more state budget funding for coastal resilience in the coming year can be used by the Coastal Conservancy for project planning on Bay Area marsh projects. And beyond money, we just need to advocate with site owner agencies to make these projects a higher priority so that they can be ready for Measure AA implementation funds sooner. And then lastly, I just wanted to encourage all the board members to continue working to get the San Francisco Bay Restoration Act approved by the US Senate to increase federal funding for the Bay through the US EPA program over the next decade. We hope you'll continue to urge Senators Padilla and Feinstein to make this a priority. And Representative Speer, who's devoted over a decade to that cause, I think getting it across the finish line would be a great legacy for her and for the Bay as she retires from Congress. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. Any other public comments? And we're gonna be saying a few words about Amy under the chair's report.
No, no public comments, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. Number 4, item 4 is board member announcements. Do any board members want to say something? Director Hahn.
Thank you. And also my warmest welcome to Amy and really and all the others who are stepping up in the organization. Really excited to work with you. And thank you for taking on these big roles. I wanted to thank Jessica Davenport, who made a wonderful presentation at the Berkeley City Council just last week. We invited her to provide some orientation to my colleagues and the public in Berkeley about what the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority is and what it does. And it was a very well done presentation. It was also very well received. She rightfully did not stay for the rest of the whole meeting, but I can say that my colleagues referred to the study, to the presentation later in, we were talking about the redesign of our marina and a number of other tangential things. And with this new knowledge, my council colleagues were already saying like, well, how is that going to implicate wetlands? And how does that mesh with wetlands restoration efforts? And so really, I think it was important. And so to the comments that Mr. Quigley just made about how we really need jurisdictions around the Bay to be aware of these funds and aware of the opportunities and prepare their shorelines for the kinds of projects we need. I'm really hopeful that this positive experience is something that we can pick up and carry on. And I personally am ready to support that effort by accompanying staff to meetings that you might want to have with other jurisdictions. And I think that's a very easy and good way for us to gain visibility and a quick, easy way for council members and water board members and county supervisors to understand that this program exists and gain interest. So I really wanted to thank Jessica for all the time and for coming to our council meeting and throw that out there that it was very successful and something I hope that we as an agency can continue. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Director Hahn. Director Lieber, and I want to acknowledge Supervisor Gorin is here now. Susan, Director Lieber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I also want to extend my congratulations to Amy Hudsall. I think that this is going to be a wonderful new era of the agency and of the Conservancy as well. And I think it's going to be a very effective and meaningful tenure at a time when we really need that the most. So welcome into the new role. And I wanted to note that I attended a meeting between the League of California Cities and BCDC about the Bay Adapt plan, which staff from the Restoration Authority was very involved with forming, as well as our chair. And I think it gives a new pathway for the cities to get connected in the way that Councilmember Hahn alluded to, which is so needed right now to really accelerate projects. So that was welcome meeting to attend. And I'm asking that our city sign on to Bay Adapt. And they are going to be taking that to various cities around the Bay. So that's another on-ramp for local governments to get into the game. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Director Holman.
Yes, with very sincere apologies, I need to recuse I need to leave the meeting. I apologize for that.
Okay.
Just not feeling well.
All right.
Sorry.
Be well. Be well.
Thank you.
I didn't count. Do we still have a quorum? I believe so, right? Yes.
Yes, we do. Sorry.
Okay. Any other board comments? Nope. Oh, yes, Director Gorin.
I apologize for being a few minutes late. I'm
Well,
directing.
you help us with our quorum. Thank you.
This is good. I need to be here for that, but I apologize for that. Happy holidays to everybody. Amy, a huge warm welcome to you. And I really want to thank you for when I was a new board member, you gave me such an excellent introduction. And it was just terrific I was so excited to receive the notice that you were selected because we couldn't ask for a better chief and cheerleader than you. So thank you so much for applying, and thank you to the team that selected you. Yay, full speed ahead.
Okay, any other board member comments? All right, moving on to item 5, Chair's report. Well, the Amy Hutzel party has already started, so I didn't wait for the chair's vice chair's report here. And I'll just second what everybody said. I know we've all had a chance to work with Amy in her important role here for many years. So I know on behalf of the whole Bay Area community that cares about the Bay, I want to congratulate Amy on being appointed as the executive officer of both the State Coastal Conservancy and, of course, our own Restoration Authority. And you all know that Amy has served as the interim executive officer for the Restoration Authority and the deputy executive officer for the State Coastal Conservancy. So she knows both agencies very well. She's been with the Conservancy for over 20 years. And during that time, Amy's been very instrumental in a number of key Bay restoration projects. Of course, she was around with us at the beginning and helping establish the Restoration Authority. I remember those early days and worked with the authority board and many stakeholders in helping write our Measure AA. Just to remind us, which got over 70% of Bay Area voters back in 2016. After the passage of the measure, she also led the development of the Bay Restoration and Regulatory Integration Team, which is accelerating the permitting process for restoration projects. So, Amy, let me pause. Do you want to say anything?
I want to thank you all for all the very kind words, and also thank you all for your service to San Francisco Bay. I do feel a great sense of responsibility and some pressure. This is the decade.
No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure, but sea levels are rising. And between Restoration Authority funding and the state's coastal resilience funding and now the Federal Infrastructure Act, we just have great opportunities to move projects forward in San Francisco Bay. So I'm very excited about that, and it does take a lot of work to move these projects forward. As Josh was talking about the Chronicle article about Dutch Slough and how long that took, I was thinking in last Sunday's New York Times, there was a special section called Headway, just about how long it's taken to move the Big U project forward in New York after Superstorm Sandy. So these are not, easy projects, and addressing all the challenges from, the regulatory process to real estate and all sorts of other things. It's a huge challenge. And then I also just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Mary Small, who, yay, here she is. And she's been the Chief Deputy EO at the Coastal Conservancy for probably a decade at this point. Now with me moving into the EO position, we have an opportunity to get Mary involved in the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority and San Francisco Bay Wetlands. She's been very focused on the very rewarding work in Southern California, but we're gonna pull her into the Bay. So with that,
not too far into the Bay.
not too far. No, well, the Bay is very shallow, so
Yes,
it's okay.
yes.
It's a shallow bay.
Not over my head, I hope.
No. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Vice
Thanks,
Chair
Amy.
Joya.
One of the advantages of participating in this meeting from my home today, which I'm doing today, rather than from my office where I often am, is I get to look at the bay while I'm in this meeting. So, and I get to look at a bay that has improved because all of the great work of so many of you, in our agency, but many of you, Sally, when you carried the legislation to create this, and Amy, all of your work over the years, the whole team. So it's just, for me, it's symbolic to look at the bay and see how, better it's become, and then look at all of you for being part of that. Just to finish up the chair's report, I also want to acknowledge the pending retirement of Brian Mayhew and Susan Wu. As the CFO of MTC, Mr. Mayhew has been acting as treasurer to the authority, supported by Ms. Wu as MTC's Director of Treasury and Revenue. And Mr. Mayhew was retiring from MTC after 22 strong years of service to the agency, 16 of those years as the Chief Financial Officer. And Ms. Wu is retiring after 21 years of service to MTC. Both have provided strong support to the authority since the passage of Measure AA, really helping us with meeting our financial requirements, as demonstrated by the results of the 2021 financial audit, which is on today's agenda. And I just want to extend, on behalf of the authority, our thanks to both Brian and Susan for their service to us over the years.
Thank you.
All right, so item 6, executive reports. 6A is continuation of remote meeting due to the state of emergency. And I know we have a memo attached on the continuation of remote meetings.
Yes, so there's a memo and a resolution, and staff recommends that the authority adopt Resolution 84, which would authorize the board, the oversight committee, and the advisory committee to meet remotely for an additional 30 days. So with winter coming on and concerns about infection rates increasing, we recommend continuing the remote meetings for now. So this is an action item.
So are there any questions or comments from the board on this? So if not, are there any public comments?
No, sir.
No public comments. And just as a question before the motion, note here, are we having a special board meeting in January on this to continue we'll need to do that again to continue this 30-day authority?
Yes, we will have to do special board meetings for as long as we want to continue this, because we don't meet every 30 days.
Got it. Okay. So is there a motion to approve this? All right. Director Lieber, motion, and is there a second? Director Peskin. I guess you have to do a roll call, right?
Sir.
Yes, roll call.
All right. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
Director Hallman, Councilmember Hahn,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Supervisor Gorin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Joya.
Aye.
This motion passes, and agenda item 6A is approved.
Great, thank you. Moving on to item 7, the advisory committee chair's report to the governing board. And we have Jessica Martini Lamb, the chair of the advisory committee.
Good morning, Vice Chair and board members. I'll be providing a brief summary of the advisory committee's most recent meeting that was held on November 19th. The advisory committee heard the yearly update on implementation of the committee's equity recommendations from Restoration Authority staff. And our AC Vice Chair, Lisa Horwitz-McCann, who's leading the Equity Ad Hoc Committee for the AC, provided an update on the ad hoc's work and plans to bring proposed equity-related recommendation to our March meeting, the AC's March meeting for discussion. And Restoration Authority staff also presented on the geographic distribution of Measure AA funds. So I believe this was the same presentation that the board heard at their last meeting. And AC members discussed the commitment to taxpayers for distribution of funds generated throughout the Bay, but also how to communicate where the greatest opportunities for large-scale tidal restoration exists in the Bay and the region-wide efforts of quickly restoring these areas, as well as why some of the smaller projects may cost more for restoration. And then the AC also reviewed its charter. The charter requires review at least every 3 years. And AC members discussed some of the benefits of the remote meetings that we've been having in terms of the greater member participation, obviously reduced travel time and expenses. And we also discussed options for trying to achieve hybrid meetings in the future, including some AC members offering to evaluate opportunities to meet in multiple locations in compliance with the Brown Act requirements. That's something we'll probably be considering at future meetings. And then the AC also discussed whether the charter should be amended to require more detailed reporting to the governing board on the level of consensus reached when the AC is making recommendations to the board. So on behalf of the AC, I'm going to request some feedback from the board today on this topic if there's time and interest. As described in the charter, the advisory committee makes decisions and recommendations through a consensus-based process. And consensus is defined as the general agreement by all members of the AC present during the meeting when a decision item's on the agenda. If we need to test the level of support for the proposal recommendation, the committee uses a tool called the gradients of agreement, which is a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being strong opposition and 5 being strong support. And a recommendation is considered a consensus decision if all members register a 3 to a 5 on the gradients of agreement. We don't keep a count of the number of AC members at each level of agreement. It's not required in the charter currently. And the AC members are wondering if the governing board has interest in knowing where AC members' recommendations fall on the gradient scale. So for example, if we reach consensus on making a recommendation, how many members might have been at a 3 level, which is stand aside or neutral, or might have been at a 5 level, which is strong support. So if governing board members are interested in that level of understanding, the AC could consider a revision to our charter at our next board meeting in March, on March 18th of 2022. And with that, I'll conclude my report.
So you're seeking feedback now about that issue, correct?
Yes, if there's time and
Okay.
the board members have feedback to provide today.
So I know this isn't listed as an action item. Is it still appropriate to provide input on this? To the staff?
Yeah, Vice Chair Drea and governing board members, I think it's appropriate to provide feedback. It would not be appropriate to take a vote. So if
Right.
there's conflicting feedback,
Right.
you know, we'd have to bring it back, but some general direction would be okay.
So before we do this, I just a couple questions that'll help us maybe provide appropriate feedback. Is this process used for all votes or just certain types of votes of the advisory committee?
It's used when the advisory committee has an item on its agenda, which we're going to be passing a recommendation onto the governing board.
That includes funding as well?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, so you're saying now what is disclosed currently about on individual members' votes? If their gradient of agreement is just their agreement is obviously there's got to be votes. It's because it's a Brown Act body, right? The advisory committee is a Brown Act body. It must take some type of votes because we get recommendations.
So when we're making recommendations, or we're considering making recommendations to the board, we're looking initially at getting consensus across the committee. If there is consensus expressed across the committee, then that is considered consensus for making the recommendation.
Mhm.
If there is not general consensus across the committee, then we may take a vote. And so at that time, the numbers of noes, yeses, and abstentions are recorded. They are not recorded by individual, just the number of counts for noes, ayes, and abstentions. So if we reach general consensus, then we don't record the number of committee members that are at that, what level of scale their consensus is.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that the names weren't recorded. Isn't it required if you're a Brown Act committee? So this is really to our council that the names of the votes be recorded if it's a Brown Act committee?
I'm not sure
And if
about
it's not Brown
that.
Act, yeah, I guess it's we operate under the Brown Act, not under the like BCDC operates under Bagley-Keene because it's a state agency. But so I thought my understanding is that advisory body is a Brown Act committee, and that a Brown Act committee would require votes. I mean, and plus I'll just state, I think for transparency, I mean, I'll ask everyone to weigh in here, but for transparency on making major funding decisions, that we need to have sort of disclosure of votes of how people vote. Aside from the Brown Act requirements, that these are major, funding decisions, and I think the public deserves the transparency to see the votes.
To be clear, the advisory committee is not making a decision on providing the funding. It's simply making a recommendation to the board.
Right. No, I understand that. It's like, because we all operate in cities and counties with advisory bodies that also make recommendations to either the city council or the board of supervisors. And they're Brown Act bodies, and their votes are recorded because they're making recommendations to the full elected body that makes the final decision, and those require disclosure of votes. I'm actually a little surprised. I mean, I hadn't realized that the individual votes weren't recorded. So I'll weigh in. Director Hahn. Oh, you were muted.
Sorry, still can't believe I still do that. I wanted to say that I really appreciate the spirit of this way of making decision. And I understand very much why that is a good way to do things. I do not know the answer to the question that Supervisor Joya is raising, but I do, having raised it, I share the question. And I feel like that's something maybe we should refer to our legal staff to take a close look at the process that is being carried out or proposed here, and obviously let the advisory committee know if it's legally feasible, and then maybe report back to us as well. And if it is not, then maybe there is something that approximates it, because I do want to support the intent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do also think that in particular, when we're making funding decisions, there can always be allegations of unfairness because literally one person is getting money and another is denied. And I think in situations like that, where we're wielding the taxpayers' money, and there are questions around equity in the traditional sense, but also geographic equity and things like that, I think we want to make sure that we are providing the level of
Mhm.
transparency that will make other people confident that they've been treated fairly. And so again, I don't feel like I have the answer because I'm not familiar enough with the process you've described, but I do share the concern. Thank you.
Other comments? Director Lieber?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I guess the question about the Brown Act would hinge on whether or not the advisory committee is considered a legislative body, because the law did change in 2014 to require legislative bodies to take individual votes. But I think the way that it was explained to us on the advisory committee when I was on there, it was that it was not considered a legislative body. So I'd be interested in what direction that goes in. I think what's most salient to me, knowing that the overwhelming majority of people that are on the advisory committee are coming from agencies, would be when the community representatives that are there differ from the agency representatives. And I know that that's not exactly on point of what you're asking, but maybe that could be captured in knowing whether it was a 3 or a 5 on the scale, if the scale ends up being what moves forward.
Great. Other comments? Just as an additional comment, I think I agree. I think maybe we need to get, and this can come back to us, we can get our council to sort of come back to us on the issue of whether this really is a Brown Act committee that sets certain requirements in place. Of course, we can establish committees as Brown Act as well. And this happened, let me just give an example, at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. The Air Board established what's called a community emissions reduction committee, a community advisory committee of residents in Richmond, San Pablo, North Richmond, that is developing a community emissions reduction plan. And it's advisory, and it's an emissions reduction plan for mobile and stationary sources. So it's significant, subject to enactment by other agencies. And it's a Brown Act committee. And the community wanted it that way. So I guess I don't know, from my time being in office, all the advisory committees that make recommendations to us are Brown Act and make recommendations, or their votes are recorded. I just think if I were a member of the public around the Bay Area, I'd want to know, I mean, because the advisory committee recommendations are frankly pretty strong and meaningful, right? And are relied upon by us. And that's where a lot of the key decisions get made. And I think the public deserves to know, I mean, aside from the gradient issue, which is a separate issue, I think that's great. The gradient consensus process, as Director Hahn mentioned, I think is very good. I'm more referring to the recording of votes, that I think absolutely the public deserves to know which of those advisory committee members are voting for what. I mean, this is like millions of dollars. And to have people vote anonymously, this issue got heavily criticized when the Air District had a monitoring committee where people voted anonymously on things. And that got heavily criticized because they said, who voted for what on the monitoring plan? And that's why when they set up this new emissions reduction committee, it changed and was clear about people recorded their votes. So I guess I hadn't realized all this time that the individual votes weren't recorded. So maybe we get a better legal understanding of what, at least at a minimum, the legal requirements are of the advisory committee, and then and whether it legally needs to be established under state law as a Brown Act committee. But then in addition to that, from a policy perspective, there's nothing that prevents us from requiring it to be a Brown Act committee and then subject to the Brown Act requirements. Director Hahn, Sophie?
Actually, I was just going to make the very same point that you did, that it's both, there's a baseline legal question, but then there's a policy question,
Yeah,
and
right,
articulated it
right.
very clearly.
Good.
I do see that we have our council
Yeah.
lit up her
Okay.
her frame there. I don't know if that was something that she had to add,
Or
but I
Amy,
just
yeah.
wanted to bring that to your attention.
Amy, did you want to say something, or was there are two Amy's here? Are so which Amy wanted to say something? Yes.
Oh, yeah, I will just say that, yes, we will look into this and get back to you. My understanding is the advisory committee is a Brown Act body.
Right.
Because advisory committees established by formal action of a legislative body are legislative bodies subject to the Brown Act. I do need to look into the voting. I know the charter for the advisory committee was set up a few years ago, so we can go back and look at that. I know that we also built into the advisory committee some layering so that, yes, they do report directly to the board, but they also provide their recommendations to staff, who then review them. And there's some layering built in because of Political Reform Act issues and that are created if they're making their recommendations directly without oversight to the board. But we can pull out the charter and look at these questions and bring a report back to you.
Yeah, so it sounds like this may come back then as more of an action item for discussion. And then our recommendations can be in the form of an action. And at a minimum, you'll come back to us with what the legal requirements are, right? And then, but also we need to then make potentially some policy decisions that go beyond what the legal requirements are, so we can talk about those as well. All right, any other comments on this item? Any public comment on this item?
No, sir. No public comment.
Great, thanks. And thanks for the service of the advisory committee. We want to get it right.
No, thank you very much for the feedback. It may
Thanks,
have been a little
Jessica.
impromptu, but we appreciate it very much.
No, it's great. Thanks a lot. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 8, which is approval of the summary minutes for October 15th. Are there any questions or comments from the board? And if not, is there a motion and a second? Motion by Director Peskin, second by Director Lieber. All right, roll call.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wait, I guess I should ask, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Roll call.
All right. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
Councilmember Hahn,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Supervisor Gorin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Joya.
Yes.
So this motion passes. October 15 minutes is approved. Sorry.
Great. Item 9, approval of summary minutes for November 15th. First, I'll ask any comments or questions by board members. Any public comment?
No, sir.
All right, is there a motion and a second?
I move.
Moved by Director Gorin, second by Director Peskin. Roll call.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
Councilmember Hahn,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber, Supervisor Gorin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Joya.
Yes.
This motion passes. November 15th minutes are approved.
All right, item 10 is a Lower Walnut Creek Restoration Project update, informational. I know we have a presentation by our Contra Costa County Flood Control Water Conservation District. So we'll be making that. Paul, is that you?
That is me. I'm here to present.
Good to see you, Paul.
Thank you. Let me do a couple clicks here and hopefully I can get my presentation up on the screen. There's way too many windows that pop up here.
We know the feeling.
I think we're seeing the wrong screen. How do I switch to the other screen?
Well, we're seeing something that does say Lower Walnut Creek Restoration Presentation. We are seeing that.
True. I just want to get it onto the other screen. It's the left screen. I got to get on the right screen. This is a
Yeah,
different
go,
interface.
Paul, go up to where it says display settings. Up in that top, it's the middle one.
Got it.
And then click on that and you swap.
How's that looking?
Good.
Good.
I guess we realized one of the reasons, Amy, you've also gotten this position is you know how to figure out the technology.
It's because I messed it up last week. Yeah, that's what you have to do.
Well, thanks for having me here today to talk about my favorite project. I want to take a quick look back and then I'll quickly move forward and highlight the implementation of the project this summer. And so really the title of my talk is How I Spent My Summer. It's a little bit like going back to middle school, I guess here a little bit. But first, about our flood control district, we're celebrating our 70th anniversary this year. Supervisor Joya knows all about this, but I actually have two business cards. I have a public works business card and a flood control business card. And most importantly, we are stewards of nearly 80 miles of creeks throughout Contra Costa County. So if you look at the thousands of stream miles that we have in the county, the flood control district is responsible for those shown in bold blue here. And in the west, they go from Wildcat San Pablo and all the way to the east part of Contra Costa County with Marsh Creek and its tributaries and Brushy Creek and Kellogg Creek. And our largest watershed is the Walnut Creek watershed at 150 square miles. And when we talk about lower Walnut Creek, I can't tell you how many people are questioning why it's not in San Ramon, because that's the lower part of the map. Instead, lower means lowest in elevation. So it's really at the mouth of the watershed where it's shown here in the red circle. And since the flood control district looks at watersheds, I wanted to show a quick map here just to compare the size of the Walnut Creek watershed. The little bit of yellow here is our project area. And you can just compare this to San Francisco across the bay. So it kind of gives you an idea of the magnitude of what we're talking about. So why are we doing this project? Our project is really specifically designed to restore wetlands for a number of rare and endangered species. We also are maintaining or improving levels of flood protection. And we do this by creating a system that works sustainably with natural sedimentation processes. And we do that to reduce or eliminate maintenance dredging. And with our partners like East Bay Regional Park District and John Muir Land Trust, we provide public access opportunities, educational opportunities, as well as recreational opportunities. But really, we're doing it for critters like this, arguably the cutest mammal on the planet, salt marsh harvest mouse. Although I did a presentation and someone really took offense at this slide, and I thought, how could someone take offense at this salt marsh harvest mouse? And they bombarded me with photos of the Australian quokka. And that is also a very cute mammal, but we've agreed in a truce. And so I will say from now on that this is the Northern Hemisphere's cutest mammal. Also, Ridgeways Rail, we have not found any on site, but we are optimistic that they will come visit us. And we have a number of black rail, not specifically on our site, but they are literally all around us on all sides, nesting, happy as can be, and waiting to move into the habitat that we're providing for them. Also, for the public access like this, we hope to get folks out here with our partner, John Muir Land Trust. So what exactly are we doing? This is our plan. It looks complicated. Don't worry, there's no quiz. Basically, for this phase of the project, we've restored and enhanced over 300 acres of habitat. 200 acres of that is the restored and enhanced tidal wetlands that we show in green. 40 acres are in yellow here. That's the transitional habitats, and that's specifically to allow accommodation space along the ecotone slope for sea level rise accommodation. We have these orange areas, which are 52 acres of upland areas, and that's part of the recreation plan, as well as being able to balance our cut and fill on site. And then finally, we reserved 8 acres of the access for trails as well as maintenance access. Most importantly, though, the blue squiggly lines you see here are new dendritic tidal channels. I'm going to show some pictures of that in just a bit. Our project is over 5 miles of these new type 1 through type 4 channels. And then the various shades of green here are our new tidal and seasonal wetland habitats. So we're partnering with John Muir Land Trust, and this is the map of their proposed features Basically, I like to say that we're baking the cupcake and then they're adding the frosting on the top. So ours is a strong, tasty foundation, but theirs might even be more tasty to the public because that's what they see. And the Restoration Authority did fund our joint project. We did a joint application. So we are the actual recipient of the funds, and then we have a pass-through for John Muir Land Trust, which will help build these facilities. Basically pedestrian bridges, vista points, bird watching blinds, signage, parking lot, staging, restroom, and 3 kayak launches that we're putting in. So that's pretty cool. No presentation is complete without a funding sign, and the Restoration Authority is our primary funder. Our grant was for $7.9 million, and that grants you the largest logo in the middle of the sign. So we do that on all of our communications, all of our presentations like this, and we had banners and signage for our breach event as well, acknowledging all of our funders. So let's get into how we spent the summer. We started construction in April, and now we're about 94% complete. I'm headed out after this meeting to the field, and I might update this to 95% based on what's happened in the last couple of days. We've installed over 7 miles of mouse exclusion fence, which is a lot of orange plastic. We've moved over 330,000 cubic yards of soil. We are very unique around the Bay in that we have what's called elevation capital. We are not low in elevation. Some of our part is we have extra. And so we've actually stockpiled this on site, made it part of our recreation plan. And our successors can decide if there's a better use for that material. If sea level rise accelerates, for example, and we need more material on site, we have it pre-staged there. We've built 5.3 miles of these new tidal channels throughout our marsh site. And we did a big levee breach celebration on October 29th. I'll show some pictures of that in a minute. We're currently building over 3,000 feet of a new setback levee, and that is the foundation for an extension of East Bay Regional Park District's Iron Horse Trail, which is, as I understand, it's their most used facility in the East Bay. So our total project cost is around 19 million. We had 16.4 million of grants that went towards this, and of that, 6.9 million was for this phase of Restoration Authority funding, and then 1 million addition is a pass-through that goes to John Muir Land Trust for their part. So very appreciative, and you guys are the major funder of the project. So this is the end result. It doesn't look like much, it's just a squiggly trench in the dirt, but this is before the rains. And this is a tidal channel, our type 1 tidal channel. We carefully dug it in this crunchy pickleweed habitat. And so the water you see is just shallow groundwater. It's not open to the tides yet. And all of this work was done with an excavator and our off-road Marukas. You can see one in the background. That's like an off-road dump truck. So this excavator has a special trapezoidal bucket that digs the type 1 channels. And we, because this was pickleweed marsh, we're digging this portion in here, we were very surgical in how we did this. We had a very narrow corridor. We minimized the amount of area we had to clear the vegetation. And then we were not able to drive across the pickleweed for efficiency. We basically had to drive up the network that had been cleared of channels and then dig our way back out. And so this is the excavator digging it, and the Maruka is waiting its load here. So the Maruka comes in, and its party trick is basically that it drives on the tracks, and then as it gets loaded, it pivots. And so what that means is it doesn't have to turn around. It can drive in one direction and then drive out the same direction and have a much smaller footprint. But this is very slow work. These are small, slow pieces of equipment. But nonetheless, it was necessary for us in this part of the project to surgically do our work. And we were able to do that. And that took from middle part of May all the way in through July for 1 quadrant of our project. Many, many trips of those little Marukas back and forth. So not all of the equipment was small like that. In areas where we had previous dredge spoils, we had about 4.5 feet of overburden that had been previously filled into this, because this was an area that was diked off and dredge spoils have been put in there, and it was completely upland habitat that we wanted to restore back to its traditional tidal marsh. And so we used 7 of these large tractor scraper combos. Just to give you some idea of scale, each of these tires is 7 feet tall. I'm 6.5 feet tall, which is above average, and these things are huge. So 8 tires on each of these, plus another 4 on the scrapers on the back. And we had 7 of these running for much of the summer. Thankfully, we only got 1 of them stuck, and 2 of them were able to yank it out. And that was a very interesting day on the job site. So our site is balanced, meaning we're not really exporting or importing soil. And some of our soil goes to a new setback levee in the South Reach, but the remainder goes to these large upland features, and those are integrated into our public access plan. They provide a series of really cool viewpoints back to Mount Diablo to the south. And most importantly, it's been designed so that you have a fantastic view of Suisun Bay. And that's what they're building here, one of those fill sites. And I'll admit that that's my favorite place to go out there and eat lunch. And I look forward to the public having the same experience. So most of the excitement was happening in our North Reach, which is otherwise known as Pacheco Marsh. But in the South Reach, we were building setback levees. And so here's where the 3,000 feet of setback levees is being constructed. And this is placing and compacting the material for the base. These levees are built wider and stronger than the original levees the Corps built. And they're also overbuilt to handle sea level rise, not only in width, but in height. And here's an overview of the tidal channels in the South Reach. You can see it looks a little random, but it's actually precisely designed. This line that goes kind of crossways across the image, that is the old levee that was built in 1963, and we're degrading that or lowering it. And just off the frame to the bottom is where our new levee is being constructed. And this 550-foot stretch in between is an area that was previously scald and really poor quality seasonal wetlands, and we've turned that into fully tidal wetlands. So in the middle of the frame, looks like a little dirt rectangle here. This is staged for the contractor to come out and excavate this roadway and then excavate the channel underneath it, thus connecting it. So when this photo was taken, that channel connector had not been completed. It has subsequently been completed, and this is open to the tides. So hopping back to our North Reach, parts of it we had to be super selective, using that maruca and the excavator to minimize our impacts in pickleweed. But in other areas where we had this overburden, we really had to do mass movement of material. And that means that all the non-native ruderal plants are removed, but you also start with more of a fresh slate. But it looks pretty stark until the area gets revegetated. So this is right before our levee breach that we were able to remove or bring the tides back into the site. And that big event happened on the 29th. So we worked with our partner, John Muir Land Trust. They were super excited about these levee breach event, something they'd never done before. I'd been to a couple of them, and they're usually 20 or 30 people. Everyone stands around in a hard hat. There's some speeches. I thought we could do better than that. Let's get 40, maybe 50 people out here. And they said, nope, let's try for 200. And so we actually had an amazing day out there. It was beautiful weather. And they designed this custom logo. It ended up going on to custom mugs as well. And they thought that this was good, but let's even take it to the next level and superimpose it on the landscape. And I thought that was pretty cool. But seriously, they ran with the whole party. I'm really glad of that. I'm good at a lot of things. Party planning is not one of them. So on the 29th, we had our levee breach ceremony. I wanted to show you a couple highlights from that. We had an amazing amount of media coverage. Channel 2 and Channel 5 and Channel 7 were on site. And Doug McConnell's film crew was there as well. They were filming for a new future episode of Open Roads. He also served as the master of ceremonies for the event. Channel 5 featured us live on their new news. Channel 7's helicopter was around for an hour or two. Way too much talking by this guy in the orange shirt. Amy Hutzel gave a great speech. But we had print media too out there, and Contra Costa Fire brought out their fireboat for a little celebratory squirt. So that was really cool, and a nice collaboration between county departments. So some of the drone shots that we had, this is the assembled crowd, all socially distanced. And this is just starting with the breach ceremony. And this is with our back towards Suisun Bay, looking towards the south, towards Mount Diablo. And so here's the excavator just starting the breach. And then this is a couple minutes later when the breach was actually done and water was flowing in. And so really, I think I've gotten so much good feedback on this, and I just celebrated my 30th anniversary here at the county. And I can say that I have never been involved in a project that has had such good vibes as this. And it really culminated at this event. I was just blown away by the number of people that came out, the number of interest in restoration, and the enthusiasm of people that were out there that are for the stuff that you guys are involved in, that I've been blessed to be involved in. And it was really an amazing day. And even the live shots, somehow that guy in the orange shirt kept getting in the background. So I don't quite know how that happened. I totally did not plan that. So we have had a lot of public involvement throughout our committees, throughout our stakeholder groups, throughout social media. One of the things that I was committed to early on was how can we bring the public out to the site? And we cannot bring them out through COVID. We cannot really bring them out through construction, but we can bring them out virtually through webcams. And so this is something I looked into, and this is done for a lot of like convention centers and stadiums and high rises. You get the camera up there and you can look at it. We found one that you can have different presets than you can do time-lapse videos. And so we have this on our webpage. There's 4 different ones that highlight different parts of the job. And we've got quite a bit of traffic that comes out, not only from the public that sees what's going on, but the birds also like to sit on the solar panel. So that's kind of fun. So this is the butt of a juvenile red-tailed hawk, which was kind of fun. But you can see the channel in the background. This is the part that we dug with the marucas and the excavator, very surgical in the pickleweed. This was taken, I think, back in early September. And then if we take a more recent picture with a red-winged blackbird, you can see what it looks like once the water is actually turned into the site. So we're really looking forward to doing the full time-lapse video and releasing that through our social media channels on this. But you can see really the change of how the site has been transformed. And I've always been displaying this picture here. This is our artist vision of the after. And except for the public access, which is going to come in hopefully later this fall with our John Muir Land Trust partner, the grading work is done. The water is there. The wildlife is coming back. It's just not green yet. So give us a little time and it should look pretty close to this here. So our heavy civil work, the dirt moving and the levee construction and the channel construction is mostly wrapped up. And then starting in second week of January, we'll be planting the 31,000 native grown plants that we've had custom grown for the project. And then those will be maintained for 3 years. And then we'll be monitoring the site for a full 10 as part of our monitoring and adaptive management plan. So hopefully next fall, our partner John Muir Land Trust will be starting the public access amenities. Those are the surfacing on the trails, the pedestrian bridges, the bird watching blinds, the viewing platforms, the parking lot, the kayak launches. They're working their way through the BRIT process currently. And so I've been consulting with them and helping them navigate that a little bit as possible. And I'm optimistic that that should be breaking ground again this fall. So I'll wrap up with one final before and after comparison. And so this photo that I'm showing now is from early October, and the sky is blue and everything is really dry. And you can see the new tidal channels that are in place. And then this is a photo from Monday. It's a misty morning, not quite as cool looking photo, but it's not quite the peak of the king tides either, but it's close. And you can see that same kind of squiggle in the middle. This is that same type 1 channel in the center of the image. And keep in mind that this area is nearly a mile inland from shore. And this area has been separated from the tide since about the early 1950s, when this marsh was diked off and drained, and then the filling of that marsh started. And so now with the help of the Restoration Authority, I feel that we've really fixed that. And I hope you can hear from the passion in my presentation that this is the coolest thing I've been able to do in my 30 years in the county. And we definitely appreciate your assistance in making that happen. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions you might have.
Great. Paul, thank you for this presentation. I feel so bummed that I couldn't make that. I know you had invited us, and I just couldn't make it. Would have loved to have seen the breach happen, but maybe on one of our future, the authority has gone out and visited some sites, and maybe we'll be able to see this on one of our site visits in the future. I think it's a great example of seeing pretty quick action of our authority investment.
And we would be honored to have whoever would like to come out for a tour. Just let me know.
Wear your orange outfit and give us a talk. Right?
Only if the camera is around.
Any comments, questions by the board? Great, you covered it well, and thank you very much. This truly is a great project, and to all the folks on the team that really worked hard to make this project happen.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, now we move on to the fun part of our agenda, the even more fun part, which is grant items, which are action items. So as we start in the north, item 11 is San Pablo Baylands Collaborative Protection and Restoration Project Phase 2, Camp 4 Ranch Acquisition and Stewardship Project. So who's presenting on this?
Jessica is presenting, and she is currently sharing.
Great.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Joya, board members, and members of the public. I am recommending that the authority disperse up to $1,317,000 to Sonoma Land Trust to acquire and initially steward the Camp 4 Ranch property in Sonoma County for habitat, open space, and limited public access and recreation. This project is phase 2 of the San Pablo Baylands Collaborative Protection and Restoration, or CPR project. The CPR project will advance the restoration vision of the Baylands Ecosystem Habitat Goals Science Update of 2015 to create a large, connected, protected landscape of restored marshes from Novato to Vallejo. For phase 1 of the CPR project, the authority authorized in May of 2020 a grant of approximately $3 million to Ducks Unlimited to restore and enhance important wetland habitats on the San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge, including Cullinan Ranch and Hare Ranch. That phase of the project also includes weed management and environmental education. Phase 2 of the CPR project involves acquisition and initial stewardship of Camp 4 Ranch, a privately owned hay farm of over 1,000 acres in size, located just north of Hare Ranch and next to the refuge. Camp 4 Ranch is located in the Sonoma Creek Baylands, which were once a vast mosaic of tidal and seasonal wetlands. During the 1850s, this region, including Camp 4 Ranch, was diked and drained for agriculture. Preservation of Camp 4 Ranch as open space is vital to implementation of the Sonoma Creek Baylands strategy, a high-level vision for protecting and restoring over 10,000 acres of tidal marsh and other wetland habitat. The strategy was SFBRA and was completed in May 2020. The diked agricultural baylands of Sonoma County, including Camp 4 Ranch, represent one of the most significant remaining opportunities for tidal wetland restoration in San Francisco Bay. Currently, Camp 4 Ranch is dry farmed for ode hay and protected by levees that vary in condition. Camp 4 Ranch is at an elevation of about 0.3 feet above mean sea level, and it currently floods from Ringstrom Bay and Steamboat Slough during large storm events, as you can see in this photo. Sonoma Land Trust and the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, are collaborating on acquisition of Camp 4 Ranch. NRCS will acquire a permanent wetland reserve easement over the majority of the property that will restrict uses on the property to wetland restoration and will permanently protect the restored wetlands. The Land Trust will retain ownership and responsibility for stewardship until the property can be transferred to the refuge or another conservation partner. stewardship of properties in diked historic baylands like Camp 4 Ranch have unique challenges and costs. Stewardship is needed to prevent degradation of the property that could reduce its future habitat value and to protect adjacent landowners from flooding. Although the primary purpose for acquiring the property is preservation of open space and habitat protection and restoration, the property has the potential for limited public access and recreation that is compatible with that purpose. The Wetland Reserve Easement Program requires that wetland restoration be initiated within 3 years of close of escrow. With input from Sonoma Land Trust, NRCS will develop the restoration design to ensure its compatibility with the overall restoration vision developed in the Sonoma Creek Bayland strategy. NRCS will fund the cost of restoration design, environmental review, permitting, and construction. The project will enable future restoration that can provide habitat for endangered species, including Ridgway's rail and the salt marsh harvest mouse, and foraging and wintering habitat for hundreds of thousands of waterfowl and shorebirds along the Pacific Flyway. The project will leverage significant federal resources from the NRCS, which will contribute over 75% of the project funding. Kendall Webster from Sonoma Land Trust would like to say a few words, and then we welcome your questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Hold on here. Did you want to ask for questions now?
Oh, I'd just like to say a couple of words,
Okay.
if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you so much to the governing board for consideration of funding for this critical acquisition and tidal wetland restoration opportunity in the Sonoma Creek Baylands. I want to tell you that this funding is one of the first tangible steps toward implementing the Sonoma Creek Bayland strategy, which was funded by the Wet Restoration Authority and completed in 2020. And I also want to say thank you to the brilliant, funny, creative, and dedicated staff of the Restoration Authority. So we're just, so grateful for this partnership.
I think that was it.
Oh, okay. Thought maybe I saw the yellow was still on, and I thought you were saying something else. Okay, that's it, right? Nothing further to add, Kendall. Okay. So comments, questions from the board. Obviously, this is up in your area, Supervisor Gorin.
I'm not sure that this is officially in my district, but I claim it. It's a fabulous project, and I'm so honored to work with the Land Trust and all of the amazing partnerships that you've created there. And we must have known long ago that the bay level was going to rise because Sonoma County, and I think at least this stretch of Solano County, has no development, and that makes it much easier to think about how to restore wetlands here. I know the Sonoma Water thought long ago that we need to start that project of diluting some of the bittern ponds and with our recycled water, and our purple pipes go out a long distance, but the Sonoma Land Trust picks up the task at hand and looks at strategies to connect all of those very soggy, isolated parcels of land. There is still some hay farming on some of those parcels, but pretty much it's literally for the birds. And so I'm not sure how Highway 37 is going to remain above the water to give access to all those birders there and to folks that want to access the incredible work that you are working on, but we'll figure it out. And thank you, Kendall. Great short presentation, short comments, and I am so proud to be working with you and helping to fund this amazing work.
Well, maybe if there's after any public comment, you can make the motion on this, Susan.
I might like to do that.
Okay, so any other comments by board members? Seeing none, is there any public comment?
No, sir.
No public comment. All right, is there a motion, Susan?
I absolutely move that we approve this for grant funding and thank everybody involved.
Who's up north or close to north that wants to second this?
You are.
Okay, I will. I'll second it. Yeah, I'm sort of closest up to you there. I'll second it. Roll call?
Yes, sir. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
Councilmember Hahn,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Supervisor Gorin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Joya.
Aye.
This motion passes. Agenda number 11 is approved.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
next, as we spread around the money, spread the love around the Bay Area. Next,
Love and mud.
spread the mud. Right. The water and the mud. Item 12, Wetlands Regional Monitoring Program Science Elements, and this is for all regions. Who's presenting on this? Heidi?
Yes, Heidi is, and she is pulling up her PowerPoint.
Yes, let me do that really quick. Sorry. Can you all see my slides okay? Great, thank you. Well, good morning, Vice Chair Joya, Restoration Authority board members and members of the public. My name is Heidi Nutters, and today I am recommending that the authority disperse an amount not to exceed $2,915,000 to the Aquatic Science Center to implement 2 elements of the Wetland Regional Monitoring Program, or WRMP, for the San Francisco Bay. Implementing the monitoring site network and aligning SFBRA Restoration Authority performance metrics with WRMP indicators. I will give a short overview to reiterate some of the key components of the WRMP that we've presented to you previously. I will then turn it over to Tony Hale and Christina Grosso from the Aquatic Science Center, who will go into more detail about the specific proposal. And then I will present the details of the staff recommendation. So I'll start with a brief background about the WRMP. The Wetlands Regional Monitoring Program was created to address critical challenges associated with the monitoring of wetland restoration projects in the San Francisco Bay. A comprehensive regional monitoring program meets regional objectives. The WRMP will allow us to implement key priorities in regional guidance documents, such as the Baylands Goals Science Update and the Estuary Blueprint. It fills critical information gaps. Information collected through wetland monitoring today often just sits on a shelf. We have critical information gaps that we can fill with this data that will help managers make better decisions about wetland responses to climate change and other stressors. It informs, optimizes, and reduces project-specific monitoring. Restoration managers know that permit-driven monitoring can be costly and difficult to implement. Monitoring requirements are often inconsistent between agencies and don't support larger management decision-making. This program will ensure through interagency coordination and scientific consultation that site-specific monitoring is efficient and optimized. It improves project design and success. The WRMP was created to answer management questions of critical importance to the region and allow us to learn and adapt more quickly to successes and challenges in restoration design and implementation. And it centralizes data management reporting. Data is shared rather than sitting on a shelf. Overall, the program saves money at a regional scale by using existing monitoring funding in addition to the proposed investment by the SFBRA more efficiently. Everyone's resources are stretched thin. Greater efficiencies in wetland protection and restoration are possible through regional coordination. The program's scope is designed to address these challenges through the following areas of focus. First, maximize the impact of our investment in wetland restoration and monitoring through rigorous technical guidance and regional coordination. Second, develop management questions that monitoring can answer and develop the monitoring requirements based on that. Management questions have already been developed during an earlier phase of work, and this phase will build on that work. Create a data management platform and data standards that make the information we generate comparable and useful to managers. And finally, Work as a team with regulators, land managers, funders, scientists, and community-based organizations. With funding from the Environmental Protection Agency, we have been actively developing the program over the past 4 years. Among other accomplishments, sorry, did I miss a slide? Oh, there we go. Among other accomplishments, this funding has led to establishment of a steering committee, technical advisory committee, and scientific work groups, approval of a program charter, and assessment of the data sets needed and those already available to evaluate where the region's wetlands are and what changes are occurring. The WRMP has engaged many partners on the steering committee and TAC. As you can see on this slide, these are the logos of some of those organizations who help identify and carry out program priorities. I really want to emphasize the partnership nature of this effort. This slide outlines the major phases of WRMP development and implementation. Phases 1 and 2 on the left in green focused on developing the program structures and frameworks. On phase 3 on the right, we will focus on several key areas to move the program into implementation. We have already secured funding from EPA and others for 4 elements of phase 3: program administration, regulatory coordination, community-based organization engagement, and outreach and training. The 2 remaining elements of phase 3 that this proposal addresses are shown in the orange box here. I will now hand it over to Tony Hale and Christina Grasso from the Aquatic Science Center to go over those specific details of this proposed project. I'm going to hand it over to Tony.
Thank you very much, Heidi. And good morning, board members. We'll now move on to reviewing the next steps for the program and how the proposed funding will benefit the Restoration Authority's restoration projects. So as described, this proposal will fund critical components needed to move the WRMP to full implementation. It will build on the work of the advisory committee to develop and coordinate performance metrics for restoration projects. And finally, it will support and advance project delivery by streamlining monitoring practices while collecting and distributing data to learn from and improve restoration approaches. Project element 1, beginning there, is to establish the monitoring site network, which is composed of 3 types of sites: benchmark sites, reference sites, and restoration sites. The intensive monitoring happening at the RMP network sites will allow SFBRA staff to better understand the status and trends of species, how specific restoration practices lead to positive or negative outcomes, and how external drivers such as climate change and plan development are affecting progress towards achieving the Measure AA campaign goals. In our last presentation to the advisory committee, we were asked how this work might benefit restoration project design. Leveraging this network of sites, we can yield insights for best practices that might be difficult to identify otherwise. Importantly, the network might determine key sub-regional differences to inform recipes for success. The multi-layered network with geographic range can uniquely offer these lessons learned to promote successful restoration projects. The WRMP TAC has selected and the steering committee has already approved the suite of benchmark sites shown here. Key activities associated with this project element include selecting the reference and project sites within the monitoring network, developing a plan for management of the monitoring site network, refining monitoring questions to address regional and sub-regional habitat differences, assembling and leveraging a team of field staff, integrating existing and new data, developing consistent protocols for data collection, facilitating data analysis and timely information sharing, and milestones for this element include measuring the number of monitoring sites established and regionally relevant monitoring approaches. So that's project element 1. Moving on to project element 2. It is to align SFBRA performance metrics with WRMP indicators. The benefits of our restoration projects are shared broadly among many interests, including the public at large. Accordingly, various agencies and programs have developed divergent ways to measure these benefits. In particular, with the parallel development of the authority and WRMP, there is a huge opportunity to align the performance measures of the authority with the indicators of the WRMP. By aligning the ways that various programs and efforts measure the results of restoration and the system influenced by those projects, we can achieve a shared understanding of the work undertaken by the authority and a shared accounting of its progress towards restoration goals. So key activities associated with this program element, if we move to the next slide, are coordination with multiple organizations and program representatives led by a lead scientist and supported by WRMP program staff with expertise in science, cross-organizational collaboration, and data analysis. Communication to share outputs generated over the course of the 3-year project to ensure alignment with the SFBRA. Milestones, shown here on this slide, are the number of authority performance measures aligned with the WRMP's habitat indicators, and really kind of where it all comes together is the analyzed monitoring results. So the proposed project will provide a number of benefits to restoration projects. Firstly, it will standardize site-specific monitoring in the service of regional monitoring and insights. After all, regional monitoring programs characterize the entire system, not just a site-by-site view. The monitoring site network is about drawing connections between and among sites, rather than drilling down at the individual site level, so that it is possible to characterize the system as a whole. This regional view is all the more important as we anticipate a range of system-wide impacts from climate change. Second, it will generate lessons learned for restoration project designers to promote successful project outcomes. Finally, the project supports adaptive management by providing a standardized regional look at how wetlands are responding to external forces such as climate change and development. It allows us to better understand what restoration actions are favorable in those conditions and how restoration strategies may need to change over time as we learn more about these systems. In addition, a complementary WRMP element funded under US EPA and others will promote regulatory efficiencies by aligning monitoring requirements and reducing site-specific monitoring. We'll now transition back to Heidi, who will present the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. So as Tony just said, I will now present the details of the staff recommendation. So as I stated at the beginning of my presentation, the recommended action is authorization to disperse an amount not to exceed $2,915,000 to the Aquatic Science Center to implement 2 elements of the Wetlands Regional Monitoring Program for the San Francisco Bay. As he described, implementing the monitoring site network and aligning San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority performance metrics with WRMP indicators. Although the authority will be the sole funder of the project, the 2 elements, science elements of the program that are described here, the Aquatic Science Center is leveraging additional funds towards the WRMP as a whole. WRMP Phase 3 financing includes funding from the EPA Region 9 Wetland Program Development Grant that supports complementary program areas, including data management, program coordination, as well as regulatory and community engagement, and funding from the U.S. Water Quality Improvement Fund, also EPA, for development of the Baylands Habitat Change Base Map. In-kind support includes the San Francisco Estuary Partnership and the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. We are happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thank you for that thorough presentation. We'll start with, are there any comments from board members? Supervisor Gorin.
I don't think I have any question. I want to thank you so much for the presentation. This is the kind of thing that we really do need to invest in, ways that we can create more efficiencies and certainly give and have more a thoughtful approach, systematic approach to what we're doing. So thank you so much for suggesting this. Appreciate it.
Great. Other board comments? Is there any public comment on this item?
Yes, sir. There's 2, Andrew, or 3, sorry. You can go ahead and move in the first one.
It's Jessica.
Hi, Jessica Martini Lamb, Restoration Authority Advisory Committee Chair. I wanted to provide a summary of the Advisory Committee's review of the draft WRMP funding proposal. The committee heard the draft funding proposal at its September 10th meeting, and Advisory Committee members asked questions regarding the data to be utilized and developed for the WRMP, and whether the regional approach would replace or complement site-specific monitoring, as well as the need to synthesize existing data to answer region-wide questions. And there were a number of questions and comments from AC members regarding benefits to disadvantaged communities and engagement with community-based organizations, and the metrics for engagement with these organizations should be included in the WRMP. So WRMP technical staff addressed the AC's comments and questions during that meeting, and the AC reached consensus on recommending support of the proposal to the governing board.
Okay, thank you. Is there other public comment? You're going to move over, I think there's a
Yes,
couple of others.
I think we did move over.
Dave and Lisa.
Oh, Luisa's there. There you go.
Lisa and Dave.
Hi, Luisa Valiela, EPA Region 9. Thank you, board members. Really nice to see a lot of you again. Today I am wearing my EPA hat. And really just to emphasize, seeing the evidence on the slides that Heidi presented of EPA's commitment to the Wetlands Regional Monitoring Program. Since 2016, we've been providing funding in this planning phase. And we've had iterative grants to the San Francisco Estuary Partnership to host essentially a scientific and community process to develop the Wetlands Regional Monitoring Program plan. So really, we've been in a planning phase for quite a while, and are committed as an agency partner, but also a continued funder as the program really is ready to move from planning to implementation. And that is why you have the proposal before you today. Much like the board member spoke previously, the time is now. We are much in need of a long-term data set to help us manage our wetlands and preserve our wetlands under the threat of sea level rise. And so the long-term data set needs to start many years ago, but certainly by this year. Much like water quality is managed on a regional basis and has a long-term data set to rely on, we absolutely need the same thing for tidal wetlands, and this will get us on that road. So thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers?
This is Dave.
Dave?
Hi, I believe I'm next. Good afternoon, governing board members and all attendees. My name is Dave Halsing. I manage the South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Project. Our project is over 15,000 acres that are being restored to a mix of tidal marsh and other habitats in a series of phases. Those phases are being planned and designed based on information collected by our own science program, as well as by the efforts of outside organizations and individuals. In the 15 plus years we've been working on this, the approach has worked quite well. But what's become clear in recent years is that the nature and the scale of the questions we ask and the kinds of data and information we need has shifted. When we got started, most of what we needed to know could be collected on our own project sites or immediately adjacent to them. But now our questions have shifted more towards regional effects, things like sea level rise rates, bay-wide sediment supply, nutrient loading, and much, much more. These are things we cannot hope to study on our own, and yet we need this information not only to measure how well we are achieving our own goals, but to assess whether we are having any adverse impacts outside of our project area. And so a coordinated, integrated regional approach, such as what the WRMP would provide, would be hugely valuable to us and to others by connecting our own efforts to those of these other projects to complete a bay-wide understanding of what's going on. And so I just kind of wanted to represent that from the project perspective. And my colleagues and I strongly support the WRMP. We've participated in its program development to this point, and we encourage its funding by the Restoration Authority. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And then I think we have Lisa Horowitz McCann.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm speaking today as in my role as Assistant Executive Officer for the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, and not in my role as Vice Chair of the Advisory Committee. Just to say that we too are heed the urgency in the face of climate action and climate change, and have been an integral partner in developing this program. And we also value it and hope that you will fund it. The project by project monitoring is not providing us the kind of information we need to determine you as the authority, as well as us as the water board, the kind of success that we need and information for regional scale policy development, permitting changes and incentives to continue to be able to implement wetland restoration at a much higher pace and more informed at a regional scale. So I will leave it there and just urge you to fund it for all the reasons you've heard from all the other speakers and the agencies, and for the benefit of the Bay and the folks and the critters who use it and need these wetlands. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other closing comments by the staff or board members? All right. Is there a motion to approve this? All right. Supervisor Gorin in a second. Anyone hand going up? All right. Director Lieber. All right. Roll call.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
Councilmember Hahn,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Supervisor Gorin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Joya.
Aye.
This motion passes. Agenda number 12 is approved.
All right. Item 13 is acceptance of audited financial statements and reports for fiscal year 2021. This is an action item. We have Kathy Lai, and for his final report, Brian Mayhew. And we have 2 attachments.
Okay, terrific. This is Kathy Lai, partner with Crow. I think Brian actually might be boarding a plane at the moment. So he had sent me a quick message to go ahead and get started with the item, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And there he is with his mask.
Actually, on the plane.
On the plane. Okay.
You wanted to make your last appearance, Brian, right?
Always exciting.
Had to be dramatic, guys.
Are you getting out of town this fast after retiring? Is that what it is?
I'm actually coming back to town. That's how screwed up I am.
All right, Brian, do you want me to go ahead and get started? I'll go ahead, if that's all right, Chair, to go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to bother his passengers.
Agreed. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. And on behalf of Crow, Amy, we're really excited to welcome you too into your new role and look forward to working with you. With me today, I've got Joseph Wajaya. He's the senior manager from Crow, who's responsible for the audit, and appreciate him joining today. We've prepared some brief remarks to just go over the audit results with the board here. And if we could go ahead and advance to the next slide. At this juncture, we are substantially complete with our audit. So we have gone through all of our respective procedures. We're just waiting on 2 things. Typically at the conclusion of the audit, management provides us with a management representation letter. It's just required under our auditing standards. And then we also do subsequent events all the way through the date of issuance, just to make sure that we capture everything to be audited. On the next page here, you'll see just put some faces to names of the respective audit team. Even though it's just Joseph and myself here today, we have a whole team of Crow professionals that are in the background working to complete your audit. And then for our agenda, it's just really 3 brief items. One, we're just going to go over the audit objectives just to make sure it's clear to everyone what we've been engaged to do and what the auditor versus the management responsibilities are. Second, we'll go over your audit results and your audit opinion and any recommendations we might have. And then last but not least, just the required communications under our auditing standards. So with that, I'll just jump right into the audit objectives. It's important to remind everyone here what we've been engaged to do. So Crow has been asked to issue an opinion and to express an opinion on whether or not management's financial statements are materially correct in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP for short. And as part of our audit, we're required to follow generally accepted auditing standards. And then those standards really require us to plan our procedures to obtain reasonable assurance that those financial statements are free of material misstatement. So those are my responsibilities. Brian and management's responsibilities are to prepare those financial statements. They're responsible for those, as well as the fair presentation in accordance with GAAP, as well as all the internal controls that need to be in place, designed appropriately and operating effectively to ensure that the financial statements are correct as well. So those are the objectives. I'll move on to the audit results, which is very good. I'm pleased to report that we have issued what's called an unmodified opinion. So the opinion essentially states that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And so if we unmodify that, or an unmodified opinion, that means that that's excellent news. It's a clean opinion. It's the highest level of assurance. So a very good report for the year. In tandem with that, we do examine and consider internal controls as part of our audit. I'm pleased to report that we didn't identify any deficiencies, significant deficiencies, or material weaknesses in internal controls of our financial reporting. So also very good news. If you move to the next slide here, I do want to remind everyone in the prior year, we did have a recommendation, and it was in relation to appropriate fund balance classifications relative to 2 projects. So as part of our audit from year to year, we always follow up on the status of the corrective action for any previous findings. And so in this regard, we went ahead and did that and noted that management had implemented their corrective action as they had planned in the prior year. And so I'll wrap up my report here with some really quick required communications. So first up, with any audit report or with any set of financial statements, there are always significant accounting policies that are clearly disclosed. You'll find that in footnote 1 of the financial statements. As auditors, we have gone through those disclosures, reviewed the policies, and we believe that they're clear and consistent with the prior year. Secondly, in any set of financial statements, of course, there are certain management judgments or accounting estimates, for example, accruals from time to time. Those are all subject to our audit as well, and we did not note any adjustments to be reported to the board. On the next slide here, you'll see a listing of different accounting statements that were issued in the current year by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB for short. Management is required to consider all of those respective new standards to determine the impact on the financial statements. Management has done so and believes that they had no impact on SFBRA, and we are in concurrence with that as well. And on this next slide here, if we had any corrected or uncorrected misstatements that we had recommended to management, again, whether they were corrected or not, we would be required to disclose those to you. And I'm pleased to report we didn't have those in the current year. And then last but not least, I'll follow up here with just some required communications. These are just items here. If we had experienced them, we would be required to disclose to you. So again, very happy to report that we didn't experience any difficulties with management or unusual transactions or controversial accounting policies, et cetera. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Management was very cooperative with us. It was a difficult audit, just like everything else with this past pandemic year. It's our second year doing this audit remotely, and management was very cooperative as we were going through our procedures. So certainly appreciate that. And the last item here is important to confirm, as you're hired external auditors, it's very important that we maintain independence of your organization. And so I'm happy to report that we did not have any independence matters that require your attention. So with that, I'm happy to address any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions by board members? Okay, we want to finish this, Brian, before you take off.
John, just a comment. Thank you very much. And actually, thank you everybody for being able to issue the clean audit report. It's always so gratifying to know that we have very competent people looking after the public funds, and it just is very reassuring that they will know that we are expending their money transparently, legally, fiscally, auditable, and thank you all so much.
Any public comment?
No public comment, sir.
Good afternoon. Welcome aboard JetBlue Flight 9.
Oh, I think we heard.
Except for Brian.
All right. Is there a motion and a second on this item? Supervisor Gorin and Supervisor Peskin. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
sorry, Councilmember Holman,
She's not here.
Councilmember Hahn, yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Supervisor Gorin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Joya.
Aye.
This motion passes. Agenda item number 13 is approved.
All right, item 14 is appointment of oversight committee members. Karen is leading this.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Joya and governing board members. I just wanted to bring to you, recommend that you appoint Don Arnold for Santa Clara County representing the South Bay and Doug Wallace, Marin County representing North Bay. Recommend that you appoint them to second terms for the Oversight Committee. I do want to add that they have served first terms, but it was less than half of the 3-year period because they were appointed to their terms, partial terms. And so they're both interested in serving. They were great members last year and their bios are included in the packet. So we're recommending their approval for second terms.
Okay. Any board comments or questions? Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay, is there a motion and a second? All right, Supervisor Gorin stepping up again. And second by
Sophie Hahn.
by Councilmember Hahn. Okay. All right, motion and a second, all in favor? Oh, I should, yeah. Roll
Yeah.
call. What happened to those days when we?
We're
said all in
almost
favor?
there.
Roll
All
call.
right, I am calling the roll. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
Councilmember Hahn,
Aye.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Supervisor Gorin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Joya.
Aye.
This motion passes. Agenda item number 14 is approved.
Great. Item 15 is amendments to stipend policies for both the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee and the Advisory Committee. So Karen, could you go over that for us?
All right, this is me again, and this is a follow-up from the last meeting. We're bringing to you both the Oversight Committee and the Advisory Committee procedurals to update the stipend policy to be an opt-in policy versus, an opt-out policy versus an opt-in policy, which we had before. The main difference between the two documents is that the Advisory Committee one states that public government employees are not eligible for this. That's not stated in the Oversight Committee procedural, since government employees are not eligible to be on the Oversight Committee. We've restated the policy. It's presented to you in red line and both of the attachments. So I guess we'll go through one at a time. The first one, I believe on the agenda, is the oversight procedural. But we recommend approval for both amending.
We can have one motion for both, right? Or do we need to do them separately?
No, you can have one for
Okay.
both, please.
Yeah, you want to just go through quickly? We have it in front of us. The red line is the changes, correct? Just the changes are the red line.
Correct. So this is an opt-out policy instead of the opt-in for both committees.
Just as a question, I saw the red line changes. What is the stipend amount now?
I believe it's $100 for the stipend per meeting, and they, confirm attendance for the meeting.
Got it. So they have directors seen the red line version. Do they have any questions?
No.
Is there any public comment?
No, no public comment, sir.
To remind those, should we remind people how they can provide their comment, just to folks know to raise their hand, correct?
Sure.
All right, hearing no public comment, no other questions. Is there a motion and a second? Director Gorin, motion, and I see Director Lieber seconding. Roll call. This is for both items, for both the independent, for the oversight and the advisory board.
Correct, sir. Okay. Supervisor Peskin,
Aye.
Councilmember Hom,
Yes.
Councilmember Lieber,
Aye.
Supervisor Gorin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Joya.
Aye.
This motion passes. Agenda number 15 is approved.
Right. Moving through item 16, which is informational upcoming events in economically disadvantaged communities. And we have a memo on events. Linda Tong, our grant program coordinator.
Good afternoon, members of the board and the public. One of the equity recommendations made by the advisory committee and adopted by the board is to visit economically disadvantaged communities residing along the Bay shoreline with the governing board, advisory committee, and authority staff to better understand issues and potential opportunities. So staff would like to share some upcoming opportunities for board and advisory committee members to participate in public events that are being organized by authority grantees in economically disadvantaged communities. In the North Bay, we have an upcoming event hosted by Marin City Climate Resilience and Health Justice. That's going to happen on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Exact location is to be determined, but it's going to be on January 17th of 2022. And we can provide additional details by email when that's available. In the East Bay, we have our grantee West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, and they're actually having their final presentation for the Oakland Shoreline Leadership Academy tomorrow at Jack London Aquatic Center in Oakland. In-person attendance is limited, but they are going to be live streaming this event, and we have the West Oakland EIP's Facebook page linked on the memo, so feel free to check that out. Tomorrow, it's going to be from 2 to 5. In the South Bay, our prospective grantee, Grassroots Ecology, hosted a nature walk at Cooley Landing last week, but when we get additional information about future events, we can definitely share that with you all as well. And in the West Bay, we have a grantee, Literacy for Environmental Justice, that hosts volunteer days every first and third Saturday of the month from 10 a.m. to noon. They're located at Candlestick Point State Park, and their volunteer events include working in their native plant nursery, and they also partner with the California State Park Foundation for volunteer planting events as well. And the memo had said that there weren't any upcoming events posted yet, but there's some updated information on their website now. Yeah, and when we hear about additional public events from our grantees, we can definitely share that through email with you all.
Great, thank you. All right, any questions by board members? Linda, thank you for preparing that for us. All right, that was our last item. Item 17 is our adjournment. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 25th of 2022. Wish everybody happy and safe holidays and some rain. And if there's no further business or announcements, we are now adjourned.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Thank you, everyone.